Hello everybody, today we will be discussing another Polytopia tribe, and this time it's Xinji, a mountain tribe who start the game with climbing. Xinji are an interesting tribe in concept because their starting tech is unlike any other in functional purpose, allowing freedom of movement and exploration early on that is unrivaled by any other tribe, except for Umaji, and Yadak, and Semanti, and Delirium, and Polaris. Not to mention, of course, the recent changes to mints to now produce population once again as opposed to only stars, giving Xinji a powerful economy. Except it will take you at the very least 2 turns to even gather enough stars for mining, and by the time you've leveled up your initial capital just once, it is perfectly feasible for a tribe like Imperius to already have multiple level 3 cities without any real effort on their part. So we have to take a step back here and look at why Xinji are currently as weak as they are in the first place. The caveat here is, of course, that Xinji aren't the worst tribe in the game or even close, less because they are somehow powerful if I'm brutally honest, and more by dint of there being several even more useless tribes such as Vengir and Aquarion. Xinji's basic weakness lies in the fact that they have a low spawn rate for several tier 1 resources, meaning in effect that you are out of options for a cheap economics tech to start the game off with. That doesn't really sound like a deal breaker on its own, for a tribe with such nice aesthetics, but when you consider that a player starts the game as standard with just 5 stars, it becomes clear just how crippling not being able to afford a viable technology straight away is, as I alluded to a minute ago. As for the technology Xinji does have, climbing is not a technology that's a great deal of use, but at the same time it's still better than nothing and not entirely useless either. One of the main reasons I find climbing useful in the early game is the fact that by gaining more vision by moving onto a mountain tile, you can see villages that surround your capital and therefore be much less at risk of not finding your village quickly. To this effect, you can also delay researching a tech on turn 0 in order to buy a warrior for faster expansion, although there are only really 2 specific situations in which this strategy shines. In any other situation you can do it if you want, although more because of a lack of a better plan than because it's somehow essential to do so. The first of these situations is when you're playing in a game with a large number of opponents, because by taking the high ground with several units quickly, you uncover other tribes from whom you'll get stars with which to develop your economy, and be able to defend yourself with the mountain defense bonus inherent to climbing. The other situation is when you have an abnormally high forest spawn, in which case you can go for the good old-fashioned free spirit rush. This isn't as strong as it used to be, but it honestly might as well be the best bet if you're getting a spawn like that. This might be looking at a tribe from too pessimistic a standpoint though. Yes, there isn't really a top tier Xinji opening that I know of beyond researching whatever economic tech correlates to the resource you have most of straight away, or doing what I suggested a minute ago. But that ignores how strong Xinji's middle game has become, with a little change to the beta version of the game I play, a change which has somewhat slipped under the radar I would say. I couldn't find anything about it on either Steam or Reddit with a cursory scroll through of recent posts. This change, to cut it short, has predictably nerfed windmills to now only produce 1 population, hurrah, and reverted windmills to now produce population as opposed to formerly producing stars. This not only buffs Xinji's source of population for giants, but also nerfs the competitor that rendered Xinji obsolete in the last meta, which would be Zabasi. The final boost came from Burn Forest being taken away from Chivalry on the tech tree, which, while admittedly counter-buffing Zabasi, did make swordsmen a more viable alternative now. Researching Chivalry and building knights has obviously become a tactic with less of a draw to it overall. With this in mind, the middle game tactic is clear. Research mining initially and prioritise placing mints in locations where they can produce a good deal of population, as well as using swordsmen to pad out the giant army you'll be producing. Of course, this will be a balancing act because you must not neglect your navy at any time, even more so with fishing being your main reliable source of early population in coastal spawns. So now we have a basic strategy for Xinji figured out. I imagine many people will be wondering how they fare in comparison to other tribes. Well, the news here will probably not be encouraging to the 3 people in the audience right now who actually play Xinji on a regular basis. You see, the tribe is not really a bad concept in and of itself, but the problem is simply that in literally any situation where you might pick Xinji, Zabasi would be a better option in spite of their nerf. Zabasi can build giants faster, thanks to farming being their starting tech. They can burn every tree in sight to get farm stacks to rival anything other tribes can bring to the table, and they can make faster attacks because they're a turn 0 tribe. Your best strategy against Zabasi and the like is usually attrition, hoping that on a long enough time span your mints can outproduce windmills, and practice measured aggression with swordsmen to keep the pressure on. There are also a couple of matchups that go a bit more in your favour as Xinji. Most obviously, Umaji and the like won't be able to keep up in the late game, for lack of the same resource spawn rates and early rider rushes. These aren't that much of a problem for you as Xinji because of the mountain defense bonus. You should be able to win this matchup a decent chunk of the time with a combination of strategies outlined above, and just being careful to place units in mountain tiles, where possible to force out an extra hit from a rider. Hoodrick are much the same deal here, but to be honest I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of people who have tried to play these tribes against me in the last year of multiplayer games. Your best matchup is probably looking to be Polaris, and Delirium to some extent because you can force them to take a long route around the mountains and lose momentum. None of this even mentions how bad Xinji are against some anti-poison units which can slow down your units horribly, and are difficult to stop without hit and run units which Xinji critically lacks. In conclusion then, Xinji are a mid-tier tribe who, while far from bad, suffer somewhat from overshadowing. They're a balanced introduction to the game in the first place, but once you get there, they are not the best choice in all. Still, if you insist on playing Xinji, I can only wish you good luck. Goodbye.